You're listening to CinemaJaw, the greatest movies podcast ever, recorded on location from Chicago. My name is Matt Kay, and with me is...
Rye the Movie Guy. And this week on CinemaJaw, Matt, we look to the movies to do a little parenting as we cover our top 5 movies that help people parent. They teach kids.
TV is the great babysitter, right? Or at least it was for our generation. Now it's YouTube. You know, you just hand your kid a phone. But back in the day, our parents just sat us down in front of the old boob tube and said, here, leave me alone for a little while.
You have kids. Now they're getting a little bit older, but I'm sure you watched some of these educational programs when the kids were younger. I don't know anything about them, right? I've not sat down and watched a lot of these that parents know, you know, Blue's Clues or whatever. All through the different years, there's always these games and TV shows that are huge with parents and kids alike.
And some suck and some are amazing.
Do you remember some that were really good?
Oh, yeah. Like really educational ones. Blue's Clues is actually a great example. It's delightful. And, you know, obviously, I'm more on the entertainment side. SpongeBob SquarePants is just fundamental, in my opinion.
Both your kids watched SpongeBob?
Yes. Quinn a little less so than Parker, but it was a staple around here for a while. You know, I've seen just about every episode.
Nice.
I love it.
So you're a fanatic as well.
Oh, it's hilarious. And there's plenty of humor that's, you know, for the adults.
Love it. Well, we're covering our top 5 favorite movies that parent because we saw a great movie that we think does just that.
We did. We saw Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, an adaptation of a classic, Ryan.
Yes. And we saw a Disney Plus movie as well.
We did. We saw Peter, Pan, and Wendy, speaking of adaptations, the latest live-action Disney film.
We'll review both those films. No guest this week, no Phil this week. Phil actually currently moving back to the state of Illinois.
This is exciting, folks. Soon we will have a CinemaJaw episode. In fact, I'm just going to let the cat out of the bag. I'm working on getting Frank Ziti. We're going to do a fully in-person episode where we're all in the same room recording an episode of CinemaJaw, just like the old days.
Right. Can't wait for it. So no Phil this episode, no guest this episode. That means we are playing Stump the Kubinski in honor of Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Rachel McAdams is in that movie. We are playing Rachel McAdams movie trivia.
Oh.
I don't know on this one. I think you're going to be stumped.
I think I'm going to suck. Yeah. She's like consistently somebody I love seeing, but like until recently, I wasn't like, oh, that's Rachel McAdams.
Right. It took you a long time to join the Rachel McAdams fan club.
It did. But now I'm a charter member.
Also, one piece of business we have to take care of at the top of the show is we are entering the month of May, Matt. Can you believe it's May already? That means a new theme. We say goodbye to Kathy Bates, but we will talk about her later this episode as she is in the Margaret movie. But we decided to do another Legend of the Screen, Matt.
We did. 2-time Oscar winner. That fact blew my mind. I did not know. I've always been a fan of Jane Fonda. She has had a long, storied career. She's still going. She's got a movie coming out this month, Book Club 2.
The next chapter. And I know the first Book Club was a big hit, so let's celebrate Jane Fonda with a Jane Fonda fact. Are you ready for it, Matt? Our first. Did you know that Jane Fonda, speaking of her Oscar wins, did you know that Jane Fonda and her father, Henry Fonda, are the only father-daughter couple to receive Oscars for leading roles of all time? So both have won Oscars for lead actor and actress, and they're the only father-daughter to have done that.
That's crazy. Do you think we've gone too old here, Ryan? I'm thinking like all the 60-year-old ladies that listen to CinemaJaw are like, oh, Jane Fonda's the best.
Oh, yeah.
And everyone else is like, who?
Yeah, I don't know. What the hell? No, I think Jane Fonda is still incredibly important. She does a lot of great work in charities, and she's fighting for people's right. I saw somewhere, and maybe we'll get to these facts, she got arrested not too long ago, still protesting something. So she's still an activist. She's still somebody that is a name. And yes, I know it's not, Jenny Ortega, but...
Was she an 80 for Brady also?
She was an 80 for Brady. She's still working hardcore here.
2 movies in 1 year. Yeah. Jane Fonda it is.
Yes. And the Fondas, in general, are a powerhouse family in Hollywood, So you had Henry Fonda, Jane Fonda, Peter Fonda.
Yeah, and cheese fondue.
Yeah, not to mention the daughter. Can't think of her name right now, but there's another Fonda out there. Bridget Fonda. That's who I was thinking of.
Oh, sure, right. Yeah, there's lots of Fondas. I'm very fond of them.
All right, it is Jane Fonda month, the month of May. That's where we're going. Let's talk movies, Matt.
In 1970, groundbreaking American novelist Judy Blume, mostly known for her children and YA books, published what is arguably her masterpiece, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. The oft-challenged book speaks frankly about issues like menstruation, puberty, kissing, and religious faith. Over the decades, this book has been celebrated as almost a guidebook or rite of passage read for young girls entering adolescence. Frankly, I cannot believe it's taken this long to adapt this classic for the screen, but I am here to tell you that the result was worth the wait.
Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret.
I'm here to speak to you today about your changing bodies.
The blood is released through the vagina.
Please, just do this one thing for me. Let me just be normal and regular like everybody else. Just please, 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 please.
Are You There, God? Tells the story of 11-year-old Margaret Simon, who moves from New York City to the New Jersey suburbs with her parents. She quickly makes friends and even joins a little after-school girls club that gets together to discuss the boys they like, getting their period, and increasing their bust. Her preteen trials and tribulations are punctuated by her frequent prayers that always begin with, "Well, I bet you can guess." However, despite her prayers, Margaret is not religiously affiliated, a choice that her interfaith parents have decided to leave up to her to make when she's ready. This is the story of her getting ready. The marketing for this movie calls for your hashtag Margaret moments. And believe it or not, Ryan, I have one.
You do?
I do. Yes, indeed. This book came out and it carries a mystique to a 10-year-old boy. I was told that it wasn't for me and that I wouldn't like it. And even though every girl in my class was assigned to read it, I was not given the assignment. So when I asked what was it about, I heard words like girls, kissing, and boobs, all things that a 10-year-old me had an interest in. So naturally, I was curious. My sister, who is 9 years older than me, had her copy tucked away with her childhood things in our attic. So I snuck up into the attic and read the entire thing in one sitting. I like to think to this day that it really helped me and helped me get a better understanding and respect. And I think that both girls and boys should be assigned this book. But we're talking about the movie. But first, I want to know, Rye, have you ever read Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret?
The answer is no. I have never read Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. But more shocking than that, Matt, and this is not a joke, it's almost, now that I understand how big the book is and now that I've seen the movie and I have some grasp on this, my next statement here is quite ignorant, but I'm going to go ahead and give the honest statement that I owe the Jawheads. I actually never even heard of the book up until about 2 months ago when the trailer was released. I watched the trailer with a friend, and she saw this thing and she screamed, "Oh my God, I can't believe they're making a movie. This is the movie of the year. I'm so excited for this." And that was the first time that I realized that this was an important work. You know, then I dawned on me right away, like, oh, okay, there's some huge meaning behind this book. And she went on to explain it. You got to understand, I had a brother, that was reading High Times and Playboy, but the guy was not reading Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, right? So I was completely ignorant to the fact of the book existed, didn't know all the way up until a couple months ago. And I'm glad that I realize how big it is going into this movie. I think it helped me appreciate it that much more.
I mean, seriously, it's kind of sad that it wasn't pushed on boys as much as it was pushed on girls to read, because I think it did help me,
I find it interesting that your school assigned books for just the girls to read. What did they give an assignment for the boys at that time also? Like smell your gym socks or?
No, I don't know if you remember, like this was, I think 6th grade. It was definitely grammar school, not middle school, because I hadn't changed buildings yet. and the girls went to an extra health class that the boys didn't go to. Did this happen in your school?
No, no. I went to a Catholic school. There was
So
they
there was
didn't
no
believe
health
in
class.
sex. No, there was
Yeah.
like we came from storks.
Your bodies are disgusting.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about them.
Right.
So, no, the girls in my school all went to like a health class. It was like very mysterious to us boys who were left alone in the classroom. And they talked about this book and they read this book, and that's where it was assigned. And the girls, I think, enjoyed, at least to some degree, that mystique. So they wouldn't let the boys like read the book or anything like that. I don't know. And I'm sure they don't do it that way anymore. This was many, many moons ago.
Yes. Well, they made a damn good movie out of it, didn't they?
They did. So the film is a sheer delight. It sticks closely to the beats of the novel, but adds just enough fresh humor to appeal to modern audiences. The entire cast is fantastic, Ryan. Let's begin with Sylvia Simon, Margaret's paternal grandmother, played by our person of the month, Kathy Bates. She nails it, and she supplies some of the funniest, warmest, and most challenging beats.
Yeah.
What did you think about her?
No doubt. I thought Kathy Bates was perfect here. She's the lovable grandmother that you needed in the movie. And Kathy Bates herself is kind of like a lovable character. I think most people have that affection for Kathy Bates. So casting her here was perfect. Like filled that role by just coming on screen. Her presence is the exact presence that you would want. Like that's the grandma I would like to have as Kathy Bates, you know?
I had a Jewish grandmother from the Jersey suburbs growing up.
I found this out coming out of the screening. Matt was opening up. He was telling me how he's reading these girl books and he's got a Jewish grandmother and all this kind of stuff. Like, what is going on with Matt Kay? He's really yapping it up here.
I mean, yeah, it's weird how much I related to this movie, even though obviously it's about girls, you know? So Margaret's parents, let's talk about them. They're played by Ben Safdie and Rachel McAdams. McAdams in particular turns in a great performance, nuanced, sympathetic. It's Margaret's story, but we almost empathize with her mom's struggles a bit more as an adult. This gives an adult lens that makes the story transcend the age demographics.
Yes.
What did you think about that? The family dynamic.
I'm glad you brought up this family dynamic because I would actually say this is one of the more believable families I've seen on screen in quite some time. It felt realistic, the dynamic between them all. And you are absolutely right about Rachel McAdams. She gives a very touching performance that may be overlooked. Like you said, this is Margaret's story, and a lesser actress may not have given as much here, but I loved her here. I connected with the mom's relationship of her daughter getting older, and then also that, and we'll probably get to it here as we get into another facet of this story, her parents, in a way, almost disowning her and her having to raise her daughter without her daughter really knowing her parents and her side of things. I thought that was beautiful. So hats off to Rachel McAdams and Ben Safdie. He's awesome.
Ben Safdie was really great too. I'm going to have to reread the book because I don't remember that. And maybe it's because when I read it, I was a child and I didn't think about adults the same way I do now. Like, oh, adults don't have problems. They got it all figured out. You know, on a reread, I want to see how close they cut this from the book, you know?
Yeah. And in the movie, you have this family moving from New York City to the suburbs, New Jersey. Sometimes they overplay that aspect of it all. Here, I thought they did just enough, you know, with Ben Safdie getting his power lawnmower and, you know, he cuts his hand. And there's some of those like suburban moments where someone's like becoming a dad for the first time and a homeowner, you know, like got to cut the lawn and all this kind of stuff. It added to the story, but it didn't take away from Margaret's story. You know what I mean? It just added to the realism of this family moving from New York to the suburbs. I thought it was pitch perfect.
It gave it a lot of character. Margaret herself and her gang of friends, I thought were very well cast. And the young actor Abby Ryder Fortson is wonderful in the title role here.
I loved all of the young actors in the film. Margaret, all her friends, for starters, that they actually casted young girls at the exact age that they're supposed to be playing. We didn't have some 30-year-old playing a high school student like 90210, right?
Right. Well, it would have been a little difficult, but yeah.
But this actually was like they were playing the right exact age. This wasn't that Hollywood phony stuff. So I like that. And then Abby Forston, perfectly cast as Margaret. She's the anchor of the film and completely works. She's awkward. She's cute at the same time. She's funny. She's smart. All in that package. Liked her. And then also her friend Nancy, who's played by Elle Graham, was another highlight for me. She came off as so authentic, like a kid you would meet on the street, almost like she wasn't even acting in the movie. Like that kind of confidence and just blatant statements that she would make in the film were exactly like a kid would say who would just walk into your house and want to go play in the sprinklers and so on and so forth. I loved her.
I had kids like that in my neighborhood. Did you?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Good observation, man. She just didn't feel like artificial at all. She just acted very naturally. Well done on her part. So here's my wrap up. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret was faithfully and successfully adapted here. If you have young teens, I recommend this as a delightful family watch about the realities of growing up. Go see it, everybody.
Yeah, one thing I did want to mention that you didn't talk about is that this film is directed by Kelly Furman Craig, who also directed the movie Edge of 17 that starred Haley Steinfeld a couple of years ago. And now she's made two wonderful coming-of-age movies. If you haven't seen Edge of 17, well worth your time. And I think what she did there, she only grew as a director because I think Margaret's even that much sharper of a film. So two great movies by Kelly here. Huge fan of Margaret as well. I got to ask you though, Matt, how did it hold up to the book? I know it's been a long time since you read the book, but you know how people say, the book's always better or so on and so forth. Did you feel that this one sort of got it right?
Listen, I got to be honest. It's been so long since I've read the book. I mean, we're going over, let's see, like 30 years, man. 30 years.
Let's not forget, you read this in one sitting.
In one sitting, 35 years ago.
They're still talking about it. The day Matt sat up in the attic for 7 hours and read a book.
The funny thing, after I read it, I was like, that's it? That's the big mystery? I mean, don't get me wrong. I thought it was a great read. It was I didn't put it down, but it should not have been hidden or challenged or anything like that. But anyway, no, I don't know the book well enough at this point to say how faithful it was. I'm pretty sure that some of the scenes with the grandmother, like, obviously I think she goes to temple in the book because she's trying on different religions for size and going to some services and whatnot. But pretty sure that Kathy Bates brought that, this is my granddaughter, like that pride.
That was awesome.
I was just beaming in the theater.
So was I.
I can't say the book is better. I'm sure it is. It's a beloved classic. Go read it, but both can be good,
So there was a scene in this movie where they want to know like what the boys' parts look like, right? So they go get this magazine. No, what was it? Was it an encyclopedia?
It was an anatomy textbook.
Oh my God. And they open up that, you get one of those pictures of guys' anatomy.
Like biology diagram, yeah.
Right, you get that. And there's these 4 girls that are in this like little clique together, staring, looking at the picture. And that innocence that they exude in this scene is just fantastic. It is exactly what I remember me and my friends, and I'm talking at that age where you're trying to act like you know what it is, and this looks like that. And the first time you open up like a magazine, you see like the actual parts of, in our case, like a woman like looking at it like, oh my God, of course this is this, and blah, blah, blah. So silly, so funny. I love that scene. And of course, later they do pick up a Playboy and they examine that as well. And them trying to like grow their bust size,
Yeah.
They're trying to like do exercises that would increase their bust. Just hysterical and silly stuff that, boys would do, similar things just opposite, at that age when we don't know what the hell we're talking about. And we're all going through this together. And I think that's the joy of this movie.
I agree, man. It's just sort of heartwarming and yeah, the innocence of it was very, very well done. Well done.
Yeah. How about some jaw-dropping moments here?
Just Nancy's character in general, how catty she can be.
So I loved her as well. Yeah.
Her forwardness and her cattiness. I was like, damn, this little girl just doesn't give a shit in the best possible way.
Right. Definitely had a confidence on screen with her. She was awesome. I went with the dinner scene. So I did want to bring this up. This is near the end of the film, and as I had mentioned, Rachel McAdams' parents, who are Catholic, had at this point sort of disowned Rachel McAdams, or didn't have her in their lives anymore because she had married a Jewish man, and they're letting their child, Margaret, decide what religion. And eventually they do come back into the lives of Margaret, and everybody ends up coming to the house for this big dinner. You can imagine once Kathy Bates starts to make a toast, and everything goes a little haywire here because
L'chaim.
L'chaim. She clearly wants Margaret to choose the Jewish faith. And once Rachel McAdams' parents hear that, who are devout Catholics, obviously this doesn't sit well. An argument ensues, and it's an uncomfortable but yet funny scene and plays out rather well. I love that moment.
Yeah. I don't know if they were Catholic. I think they were just Christian. They don't say.
I'm terrible with that. Don't get me wrong. I just say Catholic for everything, but
there's a lot of different sects. Yeah,
exactly.
Which are explored in this film, to some degree.
It is interesting. It is.
How about a quote, Rye? You got a quote?
Yes. I went with, for fans of the book, their prayers have been answered. This is a winner.
Are you there, audience? It's me, the movie you should see.
I like that. Well done, man. I went a strong 3.5 jaws for Are You There, God? It's me, Margaret. How many jaws for you, Matt K?
Listen, I couldn't find anything wrong with this movie. Trying to think of something to critique just isn't there. I'm giving it 4 jaws.
Wow, 4 jaws for Matt K. That is awesome.
What's wrong with the movie? It was just a great movie, delightful. It keeps all of that parenting gold where you can just say to a young girl or anybody really, hey, you should see this movie. It might help. It's a perfect movie.
I was talking to someone and she said that she was going to bring her daughter, who I think is around 5th or 6th grade, to go see this movie. She had read the book. She knows obviously all about it. She's like, oh, I think I'm going to take my daughter to go see this movie. I think that'll be the case for a lot of people out there. I'll probably bring their daughters that are right around that age. It's a great way to have a conversation, to start something up, right? These movies can help you parent. I know your birds and bees story that you probably got from your parents, Matt, did you well, obviously.
Not really.
No.
I mean, it was lacking, right? It's a tough conversation. I'm not blaming my parents, but
it is. I always think back. The only time I ever had that kind of awkward conversation with my dad was in the, believe it or not, a White Castle drive-thru. We were waiting for our food when, for some reason, in the White Castle drive-thru, he decided to spring this question on me if I like girls and do I know what that means. It was like, this is so bizarre. I just want my White Castles. It would have been more bizarre if my dad would have made some analogy of the White Castle burger to girls, And then you got the pickles and the onions, the onions and the buns.
Oh, geez, Ryan. I was thinking I wanted White Castle and now I don't.
But
well done.
Yeah, it's an awkward conversation is where I was going. So a movie like this can help you parent. 4 jaws for Matt K, 3.5 for Rye the Movie Guy. And that got us thinking about our movies that we would show our kids to teach them some lessons. Matt, what do you got sitting at number 5?
All right. At number 5, I am going with the Danny DeVito animated vehicle written by the great Dr. Seuss, 2012's The Lorax.
Ooh, I like this one.
You could say the book is better. I mean, it is, but the book is like, it's a poem. It's a poem.
It's like 14 pages long.
Right. With some glorious pictures. And it's an immaculate poem. It really is. But I think the movie gives us a little bit more to explore with the truffula trees. And, it's a great environmental message that's tough to articulate, especially to young kids. But I think if you sit like a 5-6-year-old down in front of the Lorax, they can get an appreciation for environmentalism at an extremely young age, and just how we need to be stewards of this in the environment that we live in, and obviously curb pollution and that kind of thing, and just be conservationists as best we can. That's what the Lorax teaches. And it's so much easier than trying to explain that to them, Just
right.
Sit down and watch the Lorax.
And you're actually entertained and you learn. That's a good one.
Right. I mean, and Danny DeVito, can't go wrong.
My number 5 pick, probably a little bit older of a demographic for the kids that I think would learn on this one. It's a documentary, so it's going to be a tough sell for these kids, but I think it's well worth to sit and watch this movie with them. 2011 Bully. Do you remember this one?
I remember the documentary, but I never saw it.
Came out to quite the fanfare. Is a documentary that is looking at bullying in schools, and they look at 5 different cases of students who have been bullied. And this is one of those movies that I would like the actual bullies, obviously, the kids who are doing the bullying, to watch this movie, because then they would be able to see the damage that is being done by picking on kids for whatever reason they deem suitable to be picked on, which is always ridiculous. Bully, great documentary with issue that is clearly still a problem to today. I would hate to ever have to go back through school for the simple reason of all that worrisome and being picked on and bullies and all that stuff, you know?
Yeah. It's a minefield. It's difficult to navigate.
Kids can be mean, unfortunately, you know? And a movie like this can maybe show them that they shouldn't be mean, that they should just be friends with everybody.
I agree. Good one, man. That's one I will definitely check out. I got to catch up with it. I'm switching gears here, and I'm going with a movie that can help parent by teaching the very valuable lesson of don't trust strangers. And this is a movie that I saw too young, and my wife saw way too young. We were both kind of scarred in different ways by this film. I'm talking about 1974's Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, Jesus, man. You're going to show this to kids?
Yeah, I think you should show this to kids. You will never, they will never hitchhike. They will never trust strangers. They will see a creepy house out, by itself in the farmland and say, nope.
I think most kids will just stay out of the state of Texas.
That too. All good things. I'm kidding to all of our jawheads in Texas, but the first two I'm not kidding about. Like, seriously, like I didn't want to pick up people on the side of the road. What if they're serial killers and I didn't want to hitchhike for the same reason? Like, all of those things I learned from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And my wife has a lifelong fear of chainsaws to this day.
Wow.
I think she saw it when she was 10.
You've never picked up a hitchhiker?
I have never picked up a hitchhiker.
Okay.
I have been in a car when my friend picked up a hitchhiker, and I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm giving this guy a ride. It's raining. He's hitchhiking." Like, are you crazy? What if he's a killer? Like, what are you doing? The guy was fine. He was a nice guy.
Yep. I was going to say,
I would never. You?
I've done it also one time, and I was driving, and this was in the suburbs of Chicago, so I don't want to make it sound like we're on, some country road. We're in the suburbs of Chicago, and it was late, it was cold, and we were passing by the LaGrange train station, and there was a guy. He was more or less in business attire, and he was asking for a ride, and I was like, oh, whatever. I wasn't even going to roll down the window. My friend who was driving shotgun, he's like, hold on, this guy needs help. I'm like, oh, I'm not picking this guy up. And he rolls down the window, talks to him, and next thing I know, the guy's in my passenger seat with my friend in the back seat, and we only had to drive him about 2 miles, but he basically was coming from the Loop, Chicago downtown, was hammered, didn't have any money on him, didn't have a cell phone, was having a bad night, and he needed a ride home, and we gave him a ride home. And it ended up being a pretty nice thing,
Yeah.
No chainsaws.
Could have gone sour, right?
True. All right. So Matt somehow fits Texas Chainsaw Massacre into a movie about parenting. Only Matt K. All right. My number 4 pick is The Mitchells vs. the Machines. Netflix a couple years ago made both our top 10 lists. We love this movie. It's very funny, but it's also about the family dynamic. And what I would say the lesson here that kids could learn, and it's a tough one for kids. I don't think we understand it as we go through life until we probably hit at least your 20s into your 30s, that you realize that your parents are people also. They're trying to make the best decisions for you. But so many times when you're a kid, you can't see that. You don't see them as human beings in any other way other than they're your dad and they're their mom, and they're doing these things because they're trying to ruin your life when things don't go right, using air quotes here. And in Mitchell's vs. the Machines, we have that wonderful moment where he gives her that moose, that carved moose. And when we realize where that came from and the sacrifices that are made by people to have kids and to raise kids and all that goes into it, for kids hopefully can catch a glimpse of that, I think it would help them be more well-rounded in understanding that parents have to make some tough decisions because they're doing a lot for you as you're growing up.
God, I got to rewatch that movie because you're right. It was brilliant. It's a great movie. I loved it.
You did. It was near your number one that year. So
Yeah. God, I got to rewatch that. Parker just rewatched it. My kid, speaking of which.
nice. That was my number 4. Into our 3s we go.
Well, I'm sticking in the animation field. And by the way, mind you, these are movies that are supposed to parent for you. So you watch these to not necessarily teach a kid a lesson, but to take the easy road and say, hey, you got to learn this, sit down and watch this. I'm going with Inside Out at number 3. No one's going to argue with me that it is a absolute masterpiece. Probably, arguably, the best Pixar movie. It's definitely top 3. I think what it teaches kids is emotional intelligence, self-reliance, and the fact that it's okay to have a mix of emotions. It's not all just about being happy. Like, you can be sad, you can be angry, you can be disgusted and jealous and have negative emotions too. That's all part of processing life. And these all are valid emotions that live inside of us, and they're fine, just as long as you can keep things in balance and act accordingly. And it's a fun adventure to boot. So very entertaining while teaching that lesson.
Love that one. Love that one for sure. Definitely in my top 3. I ranked it before as my number 1 Pixar, so probably still at the top of the list. My number 3, 2007. I don't think I've ever talked about this movie on the podcast. Stars Hilary Swank as a high school teacher in Freedom Writers, based on a true story, based on the book also called Freedom Writers, about a teacher who was working in underprivileged school. Kids were not really into quote unquote learning and definitely weren't listening to the teacher and her assignments. And that's when she got this idea to give them all journals and have them write about their day-to-day lives. Writing about their lives, she's able to then get them to start learning about, how to write. And there's actually lessons in there. Since that, from my understanding, doing research on the movie today, that obviously took off in a lot of fields where people were like trying to bring ways in the classroom to relate to students instead of every student should relate to exactly this one way of teaching. All of a sudden, teachers were open more to, hey, let's explore and do this because these kids in this particular environment where we're teaching would react positively to something like this, So it changed, I think, a lot of the teaching field as well. But the movie is well worth checking out. It's one of the probably hidden gems of Hilary Swank outside of her 2 Oscar-winning roles.
What's the title again? One more time?
Freedom Writers.
Interesting.
As a guy who likes to journal, Matt.
Right. I was going to say, as a journalist, I should check it out. I'm realizing that aside from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all of my picks are animated. At number 2, I'm going with an absolute freaking tearjerker, soul-rendingly sad. So just be forewarned if you haven't seen it. The Fox and the Hound.
I was wondering if this would come up.
This movie tears me apart every time I see it. Every goddamn time I think, well, I'm an adult now. It won't get me. It still gets me. It's terribly sad. But what it teaches, I think, is friendships that are cross differences. Like me and you, Rye. Like, I'm amazing and cool, and you're Rye the movie guy. You know what I'm saying?
Super cool, right? Just a whole nother level. I get you.
Yeah. Like, transcendently cool. Anyway, Fox and the Hound, where it ends is pretty messed up. But as you can imagine from the title, a fox and a hound are not supposed to be buddies.
Right.
Here we are. It's like in childhood, it doesn't matter what your differences are. You just are buddies. And then the realities of the world set in. I think this movie's about trying to challenge those ideas as best we can.
It's a rough watch. One I haven't seen in many years, but yes, tears were shed. My number 2 pick, Matt, is a classic. We don't have to talk too long on it. Directed by John Hughes. It is The Breakfast Club. It should be almost essential watching when kids hit like freshman year high school.
Yeah.
Like when they're graduated 8th grade and they're going into high school, I think all parents should actually show them The Breakfast Club. One, I think they're going to relate to one of the students in the movie, which is going to help because John Hughes obviously had his groups picked out there. You got the jock and the dork and the burner and the cheerleader, yada yada.
In the head case,
right? In the head case, it was all great. But I think when I saw this, this being my brother's movie that he passed down to me, you got to watch this movie. I think one of the things that helped me watching this was that all kids, no matter their situation, are going through issues. You're going to a high school, like in my case, a lot of people had came from wealthy families over there. And I think like, oh, geez, they just got it made. You know what I mean? They're driving BMWs for their 16th birthday. This is ridiculous. But I think what the Breakfast Club showed you at the same time was that everybody has issues. They're all going through something, right? That's something that I think kids need to learn.
No arguments, dude. I mean, that is a Titanic classic, much more so than the actual Titanic. Much like the Fox and the Hound, this one is a bit of a tearjerker, probably less so than the Fox and the Hound, because there's a lot of ups along with the downs. But it's about loss. It's about the cycle of life. And I went with Charlotte's Web at number 1.
How can you say the cycle of life? Everybody at this point, the jawheads, like me too, were thinking he's going to say The Lion King. And then you said
the
Charlotte's
cycle,
Web.
not the circle, the cycle of life. Because Charlotte dies, and then Wilbur meets her children, the next generation of talking spiders, It's about the circle, the changing of the seasons and everything like that. Great movie.
Well, I'm glad it wasn't Grease 2 at number 1. My number 1, I went with a classic, and it's much better than Charlotte's Web. I went all the way back to 1962, another film that I would say is required viewing for all children, either in school or parents should show them, To Kill a Mockingbird. A classic book, obviously, made into a movie. Gregory Peck steps in and plays Atticus Finch, a lawyer who is defending Tom Robinson against fabricated rape charges, and his kids get to sneak in and watch the trial. And I think it teaches them about racism, doing the right thing, and striving to be the best person that you can be. It's a wonderful film, a wonderful story. You can't say anything bad about To Kill a Mockingbird, Matt.
Confession time. Never read the book, and I've never seen the movie.
Oh my goodness. This explains a lot.
Yeah.
You're a bad seed. You are a bad seed.
You never read Charlotte's Web.
Well, this is To Kill a Mockingbird. Come on, Matt.
I know. I got to get on that.
I will say this is probably the first time in CinemaJaw history that Texas Chainsaw Massacre was on the same list as To Kill a Mockingbird.
And Inside Out. Well, that's just a weird list right there.
Honorable mentions, Matt. I went with Forrest Gump.
How does that, what lesson does that teach?
I think it teaches history.
Oh, okay. All right.
American history could be learned in a very entertaining way, right? So
I suppose.
That's where I was going with that one.
All right. A lot of it's apocryphal, though. It's just like, a take on history. But go on.
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Oh, good one. That's
right?
a good one.
James Stewart,
totally.
Absolute classic, is the senator that goes to Washington and is, again, trying to do the right thing. And it teaches you about politics as well. So I think
it does.
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I mean, that's when everybody learned what a filibuster was from the movie.
I'm pretty sure that movie is shown in schools.
I would hope so. I would hope so. And last but not least, My Neighbor Totoro. Wonderful movie about friendship and many other things, but a great one to sort of show kids. And it's animated. They'll love it.
Studio Ghibli too, right?
It is. Yep.
Yeah. That's definitely a good one.
Miyazaki, the best.
Yeah. Can't go wrong there.
All right, Jawheads, if we missed your favorite movie that helps parent, please write us, because we'd like to share ones that we missed for parents out there, as they got a huge playlist, everything from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre to Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. There's a lot to watch here. So shoot us an email, feedback@cinemajaw.com. We are going to take a break. When we come back, we have a review of Peter Pan and Wendy, plus Stump the Kubinski. Stick with us.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves
Our person of the month, Jane Fonda, has had an amazingly long career. One role she's known particularly well for is the space cadet in the groovy, sexy sci-fi romp, Barbarella. Check out this classic trailer.
Meet the most beautiful creature of the future. Her name is Barbarella, and she makes science fiction something else. Jane Fonda is Barbarella. Barbarella is a 5-star, double-rated astronavigatrix Earth girl whose specialty is
love.
Shall I tell you what I would like?
I think I know.
Her top secret mission is a real wing-dinger. You find adventure beyond your imagination when you get lost in space with Barbarella.
Sparkling dreams, sparkling dreams, sparkling dreams, sparkling dreams, sparkling dandy, 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 dandy.
And we are back on CinemaJaw. We're talking about parenting movies. We're talking about book adaptations. What are we talking about next, Ryan?
Well, we had a link to see Peter Pan and Wendy. It came out on Disney Plus this past weekend, so we decided, let's cover it on CinemaJaw. I know you're a big Peter Pan fan. I had saw it before you, watched the link, and we were talking at the screening of Margaret, and that's when I discovered that you were a big Peter Pan fan, and I was worried then at that point. I thought, Matt's going to really be critical of this movie, so I'm interested to hear what you have to say here, Matt.
I am critical. Before I get into my review, since I mentioned my sister in my connection to the last movie, shout out to Jenny. With Peter Pan, my brother would stand at the bottom of the stairs, or maybe it was my brother at the top and my sister at the bottom, but they would split. One of them was holding me because I was very, very young, and they would throw me down the stairs, and the other one would catch me, and they go, Peter Pan, like you can fly, and throw me to the other kid. Could have broken my neck.
Very strange.
Right?
What the hell went on over at that Kubinski household?
They had a little kid to mess with. Bastards tortured me. All right, here we go. I'm just kidding. It was kind of a fun game, but scary. Peter Pan and Wendy, Ryan. Over the past several years, the Big Mouse has been pumping out live-action remakes of classic animations to greater and lesser effect. In 2023, David Lowery takes a seat in the director's chair for the latest adaptation of Peter Pan entitled Peter Pan and Wendy. Lowery most recently gave us the acclaimed Green Knight, as well as helming Robert Redford's last outing in The Old Man and the Gun, which we both loved. Ghost Story and Ain't Them Body Saints as well, rounding out his filmography. He even has a little experience adapting animation with 2016's Pete's Dragon, which was mostly well met. So, okay, Lowery, you have my attention. But can this little film fly, or will it sink like a fairy with clipped wings? Ryan and I sprinkled some fairy dust all over ourselves to find out.
I don't want to grow up. I want things to stay the way they are.
Can't stop time, Wendy, whether you like it or not.
Gotcha! You were flying. A little bug did it.
I don't think that's a bug.
She is a fairy.
Are you Peter Pan?
Were you expecting someone else?
I can fly!
Sometimes good directors make bad movies. And I hate to say it, but this movie is a bit of a mess. Peter Pan and Wendy is more or less a straight-up retelling of the classic tale with a few minor adjustments that do fix some of the problematic elements and give the female characters a bit of a bump. It's not all bad. I did enjoy the cast performances, but it felt like they were hampered by a bad script and even worse editing. For example, Ryan, there's one scene in which Wendy slaps Peter in the face for his reckless behavior. Then, rather than stay with that scene and show us the reactions of the Lost Boys, etc., they do a really crappy Star Wars circle wipe and cut to the next scene. You just cut away from the most interesting part of the movie. What did you think, Ryan?
That is what bothered you?
Yeah.
That didn't bother me at all. I mean, to be absolutely honest, I didn't even notice it until you're pointing it out now that, oh, okay, yeah, they went swipe to the next scene. I think it was supposed to be the slap was like the exclamation point of that scene. Like, that's slap. And we don't need to see, and you're calling them the Lost Boys. We should clarify. You're talking about their little gang of followers. That's who you're referring to.
Yeah, the Lost Boys.
Do they call themselves the Lost Boys in the movie?
Yeah, dude. What are you talking about? They're
I
the
didn't
Lost
hear him
Boys.
say the Lost Boys.
Yeah, they're the Lost Boys. I mean, are you kidding me right now?
No, but I mean, do they refer to them in the movie? Do they say, "Hey, we're the Lost Boys"?
Yeah, apparently we weren't paying attention because they even threw in "and girls" in this one because there were two lost.
I guess
there were two lost girls.
Well, anyways,
you're thinking I was talking about the vampire movie with?
Yeah, I was like, "What the hell is he talking about?"
That's where that title comes from.
Sure, but I didn't know that you were referring. I didn't even notice that they referred to themselves in the movie as that. But why they needed a reaction shot from them, I would say no.
She
it wasn't
just
needed.
slapped Peter Pan in the face. This just doesn't happen. He's the Pan. He's their leader, and he doesn't take no crap from nobody.
Well, this is Wendy.
Exactly. That's interesting. I want to see their reactions. How did they deal with it? How did the female Lost Boys think about this move? What did Peter do? Did he cry? I mean, did he want to fight her? Like, what was going to happen after that? Nope. Cut. Are you kidding? Totally pissed me off.
I had no issue with it.
All right, let's talk about the effects. They are decent to good. The crocodile in particular was visually impressive, but the effects only take you so far.
Yeah, here's another issue I got with this. I don't know where you're saying decent. I thought the effects were much better than decent.
I said decent to good.
Okay, Hook's ship, Captain Hook's ship, looked fantastic, and I absolutely
That's sets. That's not effects. That's the set.
But there's effects in there as well. Obviously, it's not they didn't build the entire ship. There's a lot of green screen there, but the look of that all looked fantastic. And how about the scene when these kids, the first time they fly, that was magical, absolutely magical. The first time they leaped off that ledge and they started to fly, literally incredible.
I definitely agree. It's always a magical moment in the Peter Pan stories when the kids fly for the first time. It's great. Yeah. Have you ever seen a stage production of Peter Pan?
No, never. I've never even seen Hook.
Wow, I've seen them do it on stage. It's great. I can fly. It's a great song. It's a great moment. I have no real problems with the effects in this movie. They're fine.
Okay,
but that
good.
doesn't. I'm just saying
Good.
that doesn't really get you much in this day and age because it's like almost easy. It's almost trivial to pull off great special effects. This reimagining was mostly made to flesh out Wendy, which I think was somewhat effective. Here she has more motivation, more agency in Wonderland, and an improved relationship with Tinkerbell and Tiger Lily. And she has much more emotional range than in the classic. However, Jude Law as Hook also gets a bit more depth, and here I think that it just falls flat. Hook winds up being too sympathetic and loses far too much of his mystique. Frankly, I didn't feel like I was watching Captain Hook at all. He lacked swagger.
Interesting. See, I will say I think the reason why the film worked for me was what you mentioned, them fleshing out Wendy. I think that's enough reason to make this film just on that alone. And as far as Jude Law as Captain Hook, he completely worked for me. If anything, I was afraid that I was going to be seeing Jude Law the whole time. I thought he was made up perfectly. His hair was long. He looked grisly, looked mean. I liked his interpretation of Captain Hook here.
Nah,
I liked it.
Captain Hook is a fancy pants, pompous. I don't know. There's something mysterious about Captain Hook, and here they just took away all the mystery. They explained his motivations too deeply, and also I feel like it took away from Wendy's story. This movie's a mess. I didn't appreciate that at all.
Oh, I wouldn't say a mess at all.
I didn't like Hook. When Peter Pan and Wendy winds up, the familiar lessons are learned. Growing up is healthy. Peter Pan is in denial, and Tinkerbell needs to stand up for herself more. While the film makes some much-needed corrections, it loses the sense of wonder and adventure that other entries have captured. This would be a fine watch for a family movie night, but I think Disney knew this wasn't theater-worthy.
That's semi-fair, that it might not have been, I think it could have been in the theater, but I don't know if this would have been a smashing success. And that's what Disney needs, right? Disney doesn't put out movies to open up in third, right? Disney movie's going to open up at 1 or it's not going to open up at the box office. And so probably a smart move to put it on Disney Plus. But as you mentioned right there at the very end, you're saying it's a fine movie for a family movie night. And that is Peter Pan. right? That's what it's made for, is for a family movie night. And I think it would work just fine. Sitting down at Disney Plus, I would definitely be recommending this. I am recommending it for parents, and grab the kids, especially if they haven't seen a Peter Pan story. This is fine. Watch this. It's an updated version. It gives a little bit more to the Wendy character, as we've talked about, which I think is a good thing. And the special effects are great. Hook's great. Watch Peter Pan and Wendy. I'm recommending.
I say watch Hook. You got a jaw-dropping moment, Rye?
Well, so one thing we didn't talk about, and I'm glad I can here, is the cinematography of the movie. I've talked before about a good-looking movie scores points in my book just by the aesthetic. This looked great. I loved the entire look of the film. The shots were great. It was a believable land. Didn't have the feeling like we were on a movie set, or it didn't seem like they weren't on a pirate ship. All of that seemed very real. Looked great. Top notch.
I'll say this. When they first fly into Neverland, I loved the landscape. It was very Lord of the Rings. But that's been done, okay? It's been done.
Where? In what Peter Pan movie has it been done? None.
In what Peter Pan movie?
Yeah.
It hasn't been done.
It hasn't been done.
Right. I'm giving it props for the landscape, but I'm saying that a movie doesn't... It's been done in other films quite a bit, right? Lord of the Rings, for example, many fantasy movies. The thing about Neverland is a fantasy land. And I didn't get that at all. Like maybe a tiny little bit when we get to the Lost Boys hangout, their hideout, whatever. But and the pirate ship, you seem to like it a lot. I thought was just kind of like, it looked like a regular old galley ship. There was nothing fantastical about it. Give us something. I want to see mermaids on the rocks, because these are set pieces in Neverland. I want to see a little bit more of the camp that Tiger Lily is living at with her tribe. I want to see more of the jungle. I want to see different parts of Neverland that are more fantastical. It just looks like green farmland everywhere.
Well, it definitely had a more realistic tone throughout the land, as opposed to probably most Peter Pan adaptations.
Yeah, boo. I mean, it's Neverland.
I like that. I know, and that's David Lowery's kind of like look, especially after coming out of The Green Knight. He had it's a fantasy movie, but there's also a very hard realism to it as well. I don't know. I dug it.
I didn't, man. All right. How about a quote, Rye? Did we do a jaw drops at all?
Yeah, that was my cinematography.
Okay, mine's the crocodile.
You didn't do yours. Okay, yours was the crocodile.
It was good. I liked the crocodile. That was probably the most fun I had with the movie.
Nice. Crocodile's always a good scene. Movie quote I went with. This is a winner, Matt. Are you ready for it?
Oh boy.
The story will hook you.
Hey, it would have been good in the 90s. Disney needs a little more pixie dust to get this one off the ground.
I'm dusting off the pixie dust here and going 2.25 Jaws. I am recommending Peter Pan and Wendy.
1.5 Jaws. Parents, put this on and take a nap, because if you've seen other versions of Peter Pan, you've seen better versions of Peter Pan.
We are split on this one.
This is your introduction to the character, Ryan. That is so sad, because this is the worst. If I had to rank the Peter Pan movies, this would be at the bottom of the barrel.
Wow. I mean, considering I haven't seen many of the Peter Pan movies outside of the classic original Disney and this one, I think that those might be the only two. So there's that. I'm not the Peter Pan expert that you are.
I'm not claiming to be an expert, but I've seen more than you, apparently.
All right. Well, we're split on this one. Let us know what you think. When you see it, Jawheads, shoot us an email, feedback@cinemajaw.com. Before we get into trivia next week, we are going to be reviewing Guardians of the Galaxy. This is just a teaser, Matt, because I've already seen Guardians of the Galaxy, but we're holding the review until next week. But a teaser, Jawheads, I loved it. And the best part is Matt hasn't seen it yet as I say this, so it's killing him inside. I know it. But we're going to review Guardians of the Galaxy next week, and we're also going to do our summer movie preview, as it's that time, Matt.
It is that time. Popcorn season is here.
It is. And you know what else is here, Matt? Trivia.
Stump the Kubinski. Yeah.
Stump the Kubinski. No guest, so we are playing 5 questions with Matt. He needs to answer 3 or more to not be stumped. Rachel McAdams, who appears in Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, is our topic this week, Matt. Rachel McAdams, question number 1 over to you. Are you ready?
I am.
How many Marvel movies does Rachel McAdams appear in?
Okay. She appears in 2 Marvel movies.
That is correct, but you had to think about it.
I did. She's in the Doctor Strange movies.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Man, if you would have got that wrong, I would have said, oh, man, this is a disaster because we're going 0 for 5 then at this point.
I did have to think, though. I did have to think about that one. She's Doctor Strange's love interest.
Yes. Question number 2, Matt, 1 for 1. Question 2, Rachel McAdams was in Wedding Crashers. Name 3 other actors from said movie.
Vince Vaughn.
1.
Owen Wilson.
2.
And oh. What's her name? The comedian, Maya Rudolph.
Incorrect, Matt. Boy, Maya Rudolph not in there. You were on a roll there. We would have accepted Christopher Walken, Bradley Cooper, Isla Fisher, to name a few. I think Isla Fisher is who you were thinking of as far as a actress. Because you wanted to say Kristen Wiig. She's not in there as well.
Okay.
1 for 2, Matt K. Question 3 is this. Rachel McAdams plays Owen Wilson's fiance in this 2011 film directed by Woody Allen.
2011 Allen?
Yeah, 2011 Woody Allen. Rachel McAdams and Owen Wilson.
Midnight in Paris.
That is correct. 2 out of 3 for Matt. Question 4 is a tricky one. What actor plays Rachel McAdams' husband in the hilarious hit Game Night?
Jason Bateman.
That is correct. He is not stumped. 3 out of 4. Can he get 4 out of 5? Matt, the last question is this. Rachel McAdams stars in 1 film directed by Wes Craven. It came out in 2005. Name it.
Wow. 2005 Craven.
Wes Craven, Rachel McAdams. It's a doozy, too.
Yeah. He didn't do The Crazies. And 2005 wasn't the New Nightmare era. This is post Freddy. What was Craven doing in 2005? He didn't do, and she's not in Cabin in the Woods, and he didn't do that anyway. Was it the remake of Last House on the Left?
Incorrect. We were looking for Red Eye. The movie Red Eye with Rachel McAdams and Cillian Murphy.
Wow, that was Wes Craven?
And that's Wes Craven. It's more of a thriller than it is a horror film. But
Yeah,
it's a damn good one.
It is a good one, for sure.
It is.
It's a good movie.
Yep.
I like it.
Matt does not get stumped, though. He gets 3 out of 5 correct. So well done, Matt K. Doesn't it feel good not to be stumped?
It does. Who knew? I knew my Rachel McAdams. That's weird.
Becoming a fan of Rachel McAdams, like we all should. She's a wonderful actress. Brings us to the end of a fun and entertaining Jaw, a rather shorter one, Matt, with no guest this week. So we want to thank our Patreons.
Thank you for being a patron, everybody who's on there.
Absolutely. They support the show. We're doing an extra retro review on the Boondock Saints for our Patreons. If you want to join us there, go to patreon.com/CinemaJaw. It means the world to us.
Until next week, I'm Matt K.
And I'm Ryan, the movie guy.
And keep on jawing about the movies.